Hello, this is Shinay Trudeau, and I'm here with Bhavani Maki for another episode of the Yogi's Roadmap podcast. We understand that your time and attention are so precious. Thank you for choosing to listen in with us today. We're so happy that you're here. Bhavani, I really look forward to these conversations, and I'm excited to see what will arise this time around.
As am I. And I just really want to congratulate you on being in this incredibly holy state and the little one that's growing inside of you. I love them already. And this is your Auntie Bhavani. I love you. And I can't wait to kiss your little padas.
Oh,
So
it's
there's three of
really
us.
yeah, there's three of us talking today. It's been a journey for sure. And talk about, calling from both sides, as you often say. Nico called to you and you called to Nico, and I feel like that's happening with this babe. So
Oh.
yeah. So my first question today, as a student and a teacher of yoga, I myself often feel the lethargic pull of the 5 a.m. wake up, both to practice and to teach. So share with me about showing up for yoga even when I don't feel like it.
Well, of course, that's part of the beauty. Is like, oh, pulling yourself out of the inertia and for something, it's like that sense of sacrifice where we give up some comfort for a greater cause. And there's a magic to it. And it's gonna hurt a little bit, just what's that Pink Floyd song? Like just a little pinprick. Of course, they're talking about like, injecting drugs. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a transmission and a transfusion. And, as we also know, there's that Brahma Murti, which is before sunrise. And that's like the time of when there's really subtle frequencies, and to be in that moment where you get to really like start with the fresh slate, and it's before all the variety of human activity and agenda starts. I mean, one of my favorite memories would be, I remember when I was in Mysore, now called Mysuru, and the first year that I came, my teacher Patabi Joyce, which we won't go into that, but there was a lot of magic in that room. um, the first year that I came, he had me come in the last, he called them batches, like we
Mm.
were cookies, I mean, he definitely cooked us. And I was like, oh, phew, like I don't want to go in the 4 a.m. batch. And so I was like, I don't know, maybe 8:30 or something reasonable and doable. And then um, and then he, once he got to know me, he was like, you come 4 a.m. And I was like, oh no, like that meant getting up at 2 a.m. But it was like really reserved for the special group. And it's now that I'm talking about it, it reminds me of what we were discussing in this just past sutra class, where there's the pasha, and the pasha is the herd, which is really people who, and there's different degrees, right? There's some who just haven't really um, had that spark of insight or that little tipping point where they get curious. And then there's those who are what Patanjali refers to as the Buddha, which really don't want transformation or don't want change. And so, as teachers, we're supposed to work with them at a certain level. They're not really even curious, and they just want to fit in. Um, and then there's the Sandhya, which is the twilight speech.
Mm.
And so the way that I had always framed it, kind of in my understanding, was these were the ones who kind of like stuck around.
Mhm.
They're the ones when class is over, and that's when there's a great opportunity for real one-on-one connection and deeper building a relationship, and we might say, hey, how can I help? Can I sweep the floor? Can I pick up the loose puja flowers, or shake out some rugs or whatever? um, but it's like they hang out after hours, when the ones who just um well, we don't have to know why. Maybe they just want to get her done. Maybe they have to run out. Who knows? Life has complexities. But they like make the time to hang out, so that there can be like a different kind of connection
Mm.
and transmission. And so I always thought about it as hanging out after class, but it's also could be before the rush hour.
Mm.
And I remember waking up and, before the sun, and going out and walking to the yoga shala. And I mean, distinctly remember the sound of this particular bird. Woo, 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 woo. I can't do it,
Yeah.
but it was like this particular, it was like the sounds of nature just coming out of slumber. And you would go into the room, and these were the people that like were hand selected to come into this group.
Mhm.
So when you have early classes, and when I had yoga Hanalei, and I was offering general classes like 5 days a week. Oh my God, talk about tapas and discipline. Was I would offer, for like when I first got onto the Yoga Sutra, I was on fire, and I was like, oh my God, this is the missing piece. This is filling in the gaps. So I decided I was going to learn them, and I decided I was going to begin my classes where I would unpack a sutra. And most people were just found it tedious. So
Mm.
it was like, maybe 20% of the students were interested.
Mm.
And I lost a lot of students that way. And in some ways now, I realize that's fine. Let's shake them out, and then in that shake up, they'll settle into what works for them, and we'll meet the level where they're at. And it's freeing to me because I don't have to dilute what I'm doing.
Mm.
And then but then there was like a deeper interest. So then I started a morning satsanga,
Mm.
and we would meet at 7 a.m., which isn't that early, except for you got to get up and you got to drive. And, I think I was getting up at like, I don't know, quarter to 5 or something, to prepare and come down to class and fill the little deepas with oil, and, always make this space. Like for me, I always I love beauty, so when you come in, there's candlelight, and there's agarbatti, there's nice smells, and there's a nice space, and the sun would be rising. And in
Mm.
that commercial location, there wasn't activity. It was a
Yeah.
really peaceful time. And I offered it for free.
Oh,
If you
wow.
did the next class, if you were doing the asana class, you could have that for free. And there was just a very um, like super refined caliber of
Mm.
students, and we gathered for years.
Mm.
And it took effort to show up. But think about like the nectar, right?
Mm.
When the sun rises, or when you're there before the sun, you're the first one to be able to dip your long beak into the flower, the cup of nectar, and be able to like slake that thirst of your soul to
Mm.
drink it in. So really, um, you know, the more, and there's studies around this, when people have things come easy, it's not meaningful.
Mm.
It's quickly forgotten. But when there is some kind of an effort that is made, and especially over a long period of time, what we gain from that is really nourishing and fortifying to our soul and to our spirit. So yes, and I remember speaking to my my therapist one time, and he was working with the Shipibo people in the plant medicine tradition, and he went on this dieta, which is like basically it's a period of it's like you go on retreat, but you're still in your life. Now that there's varying degrees, because I know in some traditions you actually go into like a little ashrama, a little hut or a little cave,
Mm,
and you are isolated from all of the doings and all of the banalities and mundanities of life,
mm,
which you know, ostensibly when you come out you see there's great beauty and ritual in that, but the
mm,
things that just seem to be kind of like, you know, it's where you have this renewal of spirit. And but you know, he continued doing his work, and with his partner, you know, he had to do a fast, so there were certain foods that he didn't eat, didn't take in any media, and also completely refrained from any contact, which he said was the hardest part, was not being able to kiss or
mm,
hug or cuddle with his husband.
mm,
So, you know, there is this sense of, oh, and I was speaking to him about it, and I said, oh my gosh, that sounds so hard. Um, what a discipline. And he looked at me, and it was so spontaneous. And so it was so beautiful what he said. He said, actually, it feels like really loving,
mm,
instead of seeing it as something hard.
mm,
And this is where, you know, we've spoken about this before. In our culture and our society, it seems like the goal is a life of leisure
yeah.
and of sedentariness. And look at the high incidence of depression and obesity and food eating disorders and the stress related, you know, diseases. Even, you know, it was like some metric there, it's like 75% of diseases are stress related. And we all know that, like, by doing these practices, they're a way of being able to connect into the substratum, to go to the undifferentiated, just pure beingness that Purusha intimates. So it's really a way of renewing ourselves and going directly to source, so that we can remember, right? We can remember what's really important, that's already here,
Mm,
and to hold space for it. So, you know, there's a reason why everybody's not there.
mm,
And that kind of makes it more special in some ways, you know? And that doesn't mean you have to get up at, you know, the ass crack of dawn, but there is something really special about it. And of course, you know, as I've like been offering these trainings, and I've been trying to truncate them because so many people come from off island, kind of, you know, it's like the challenges on all levels, practical levels, and being able to consolidate it, but not so that it's exhausting. And I have to pick up my kids from school. So we've started earlier, and I'm always like, oh God, you know, I don't want to do this. I go through it every time too.
yeah.
And, you know, like after the third day or something, I'm just like, oh my God, this is so great. It's so magical. I also, I don't like ever to use electric lights. Even when I was teaching an evening class, I just feel like the more that I can get out of those frequencies, and just to have some candles and have it dimly lit, you know, there's shifts that happen within our nervous system. You know, as they're saying, there's like, you know, I forgot the scientific name for it, but that we shift from left to right
Mm,
nostril breathing, you know, through different periods of the day. And certainly it affects whether we're moving parasympathetically or sympathetically. That those moments of dawn and dusk, as well as Brahma Murti, before dawn and before dawn, are the most propitious times, because it's this real interiorization of our awareness in which we're holding space for the mystical
Mm.
that is ever present, but can only be accessed when we get out of um, our literal, mundane kind of awareness. We develop a different kind of receptivity and perceptivity. So it is an act of love. And, you're going to go through one of, I would say, I mean, even I almost died, so I kind of had an initiation in that. I didn't actually die, but I was rebirthed in that process. But going through childbirth, um, talk about an initiation. And I remember, when I was birthing, I wanted no lights. I wanted nobody talking. And it was like the most embodied and out of body experience. It's like you want to go into a cave. There's just no bandwidth for anything else, and being able to go deep, deep, deep within yourself. And then you become part of creation, birthing itself. And there is, I mean, some people say they have these orgasmic births, and I imagine that, like, with practice you could get really good at it. Is orgasm the goal, though? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it happens. That happened for me when my milk came down
Mm.
with Nico, and
Mm.
and after, like, all, like, it was so intense getting pregnant, and then the birth was really intense and all of that, and then nursing him and feeling my milk come in, and literally everything became like, when the sky lights up from a sunrise or a sunset and everything becomes this golden sheen.
Yeah.
And I felt my body just become like this, like this effulgence and this life force streaming into me. And he was just like like my breast was like 3 times the size of his head. And I felt like the whole cycle of the creative process, from orgasm and conception through childbirth to holding this baby in my arms. And it wasn't like a localized kind of an orgasm.
Yeah.
It was a complete, it's hard to put into words, but it was an ecstatic state. The seeing the full arc of it, and I wouldn't have been able to get there unless there had been discomfort. And also because that baby was so wanted, and there's a word for it again, which I don't know. If it was Some's Gonna Die, I would probably know it. I would take the time. But these babies like yours that didn't just come happenstance, who were really wanted. And that sacrifice that we make, and the pain, like, am I worthy? Why isn't this happening? And when is it going to happen? And then suddenly there's that ripening point and it happens. These babies are really special because they know they were so wanted.
You're back.
Okay, I
It
saw
was
something
pause.
froze there. So I was saying that these babies are so special because they know they're so wanted.
Yeah.
They have this, like, capacity to, they're landing in open arms. Um, yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, there's
Mm.
going to be pain, and that's part of it. It's that, but it can be the sweet pain.
Mm.
And I always say, it's like I never regret having gotten up.
Right. Yeah.
That being said, I haven't always gotten up either.
Yeah. Yeah. Coupled with this, sometimes people don't want to come to class or even me, if I'm injured, or because I know that it takes a very skilled teacher to be able to work with me and still, you know, for me to get instruction, or, when I'm having just a bad day, I would rather stay in bed or at my house. And I also feel like you're saying there's always there's always benefit when I trust my teacher.
Well, depends on your teacher, doesn't it?
I guess, yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And there's different calibers of teacher,
Yeah.
you know. There's teachers who, I mean, I always feel like the teacher who has had an injury and then had to learn how to heal themselves, and who's seasoned and who has proven themselves, and it is time tested and gone through that, and they know how to work with you. Yeah, that's the right place to be. I'm not so sure that's readily available.
Thank you. Well said. Yeah.
So, there's people who have, um, there's the you know, there's recreational athletic yoga where the teacher isn't even looking at you, or they're just lost in their own narrative. There's the ones who just have more, need to put more time in and learning in. Um, and then there's ones who are really, really skilled in that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's so much, that's not to say, like, if you want to work out and you want to go for it and you want infrared heaters because it feels good on your system, like, okay, it depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah. Going along with this, in your last workshop that I attended up in Durango, you spoke about discipline and discipleship, both for the novice and the seasoned practitioner. And I'm wondering if you can speak more about that.
Yes. So, it's going back to that idea of, like, what's the first word in the Yoga Sutra?
Atta.
Atha, exactly. And so, it's that sense of initiation and how we initiate our experiences, and also where you are being invited to become initiated in this um, indigenous tradition in which there was real love and connection between teacher and student, where where really, like, I know for me, I, you know, I want colleagues. I want people who, like, they have it in them. It's burning within them. And then I can help them, like, learn how to work with this longing. Like, we come together in that field of longing to remember, like, this deep, deep, you know, seed within us, something more primal, something more authentic, something more genuine, instead of those 10,000 empty things in the world. That longing creates a field of resonance. And it's not a longing for something that is just going to be a bottomless pit, but it's that sense of the love dogs where the call is the response. And so finding those people and then helping to empower them, that's what we do. It's like, we don't own the knowledge. We are actually, we are keepers of the flame, and then it's our job to pass it on. So the word for someone who hasn't found a mentor who is willing, that, so it's not, it's a symbiotic relationship, and I know, like, you're ready to take them on.
Yeah.
But how many of those people are really there yet?
Yeah.
Really want to really feel this deep longing and really understand that a yoga is a way of connecting with that and extracting nectar from life, anushasana. So when you find a teacher that's like, wow, they've got a piece of something, they're holding something that I want to awaken in myself. And this is somebody that I like, this is somebody where I'm feeling like, sometimes I may like, oh, it could be hard, right? It could be difficult, but like I know this is worth it. This is somebody that like is speaking to this calling within me. And then the word for somebody who doesn't have that kind of connection, who hasn't found their teacher, is called an anatta, which
Mm.
is described as a misfortunate. So finding somebody who sees you and can see into the depths of your being and help you to bring and actualize that beauty in a way that is really unique, instead of trying to get more followers or um, subscriptions or adulation, is an incredibly rare thing, that someone sees you for you. And then, of course, it's reciprocal, because what you're sharing, if you're the real deal and you're not just doing it as like, look, I mean, I had many careers for a long time, but they were all so that I could just go deeper into my own soul retrieval and my own spiritual quest, which then just became being in love with the mystery. So I was willing to do whatever so that I could support myself in that way. But some people are maybe, they're doing yoga and they're doing all these other things, and they kind of hold them, they hold them maybe on the same par. And really, they're just looking to retire, or I don't know, or to be
Yeah.
discovered, or it's like, you know, looking for that quality of authenticity, of being wholehearted, of being on fire. And some people are looking for the quality of commodifying something, whether it's monetary or some other kind of charisma or recognition. So
Mm.
when we find that kind of a person, and being held in a tradition, is it's not for the sake of the tradition itself, but it's really where we go through rituals. And this is like really true in indigenous traditions, where there's a ritual where you go back into the ardors of what your ancestors did.
Mm.
And by doing that and going through the trials and the travails, like just think about, like, you like, oh, I got to do some laundry, you pop it in a machine and press a button. I'm always amazed at, like, oh my God, you had to make your own soap. You had to build a fire. It had lye in it. It was like burning your hands. You had to stand there over the cauldron. And, it was like a big event, and usually required the whole community. Hence the phrase airing out your laundry. It was a time for connection in which people
Ah.
shared, and there was transmission there as well.
Mm.
So, by going through those rituals, it brings us into that deepest, it's even beyond, like when we think of ancestral, I'm talking about even before we were human, or even before we were earth beings, but into that deeper substratum. So discipline, and the way that Rama described it, we're really in that first sutra, is where the discipline of yoga is be able to create space for something new. And yeah, everybody's freaking busy. Few of us are twiddling our thumbs during the day. So that might mean getting up really early, right? It might mean the sacrifice of some sleep or leisure, or even, you know, being more concise in the way that we work or whatever. We have to redistribute our precious time. It doesn't have to be, you can go very deep. You know, you can have a 5 minute yoga practice, right? Um, but really there is that discipline for making space for something new, in which there's a magic that happens, right people, right place, right time, when you come together. And then it's where this substratum is teaching you. So I love what Joseph Campbell says. You know, it's like, oh no, it wasn't Joseph Campbell. Actually, it was in his book. I think he was citing a professor at Harvard who said one of the most important questions we will ask in our life. And I think it's one of the important questions we're going to revisit. Where am I going,
Mm.
and who will go with me?
Mm.
So the relationships that are fostered in that way are incredibly unique. It isn't a tenureship. There, we could even say it goes beyond lifetimes. I'm already in love with your baby. I'm not just saying that.
Yeah, me too.
And you're in love with my baby.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
This is thicker than blood,
yeah.
right? This is so much deeper, where there's real investment in that person, um, because something something beyond words, something unspeakable, brought us together. Now, that being said, one thing that I've really learned in these Yoga Sutra, and this is a hard thing, I have in some ways given these teachings maybe too liberally. And that is on me. And you know, I'm wrestling with angels about this, because
Mm.
there's many people who maybe have gotten some of this and then they got stunted.
Mm.
They don't know how to use it. They don't know what the next step is. And I mean, that's not on me. It's not for me. That part, that's on them.
Yeah,
But also, you know, I can also see where organically, and this, you know, we spoke about this yesterday in the breakthrough Divya Drishti, and then afterwards when we came together, it takes a long time to be able to screen and see which students are ready for the download.
yeah,
Um, at the same time, it's going to penetrate people kind of to where they're at, but there is tremendous responsibility in um, how we share the deeper teachings. So, you know, I'm also understanding that, you know, like I've had, as I've opened my new shala, you know, there's people who've come in and they've said, you know, I've been intimidated by you. Like I didn't ever want to come to your class, and it's so wonderful. And they had heard through the grapevine of, you know, other people where, you know, I held their feet to the fire. And I was, you know, it was like basically they were kind of getting into this, you know, oh, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. Or in this very like in that first sutra, there's nothing casual about it. And, you know, then they broke off and did their own thing, and that's fine. And they have a function, you know, and they're working with kind of certain students. And I'm not for everybody. And I'm not saying I'm higher or lower. It's just like there is, I'm intense, you know, there's a certain intensity that I bring. And if, like, you know, you've hired me to do a job. And so if you're starting to, you know, collapse into excuses or are just being haphazard, just think about it on a practical level. If someone is being haphazard and you see a potential, um, you know, injury that could happen, it's your job as the teacher to get them to stop. If you can, oh my God, the way they're doing, they're going to blow out their shoulder, they're going to blow out their knee, they're going to blow out their lumbars or whatever it is, right? So, you know, there's kind of like that folklore that's been woven. And I can see where it also has kind of created a field where only the ones who are really curious are coming to visit with me.
Mm,
So it's just very interesting. And then that part of you where it's like, but I want to be able to share it with everybody. That's it, it doesn't work that way. So sometimes those people will be repelled. Sometimes they'll come back. Sometimes, it's just you're not in a place of resonance. Um, but it is really rare. And I feel like one of the big initiations, like all of my teachers, I would say, except for maybe Rama, um, there were real moments of friction
mm,
because they made me face a part of myself that I didn't want to look at. They put my feet to the fire.
mhm,
And I had to make a choice. Did I really want to go for transformation, or did I want to hold tight to my um, constructed sense of self, where they were really testing me, you know? They were testing me. And it's a way of like separating the chaff from the hull. And then what happens is the relationship goes even deeper. It's like a
mhm.
marriage, right? Yeah, there are going to be moments where we're going to rub each other the wrong way. And that doesn't mean that like any one of us are impeccable.
Right.
In a functional relationship, there's going to be self-reflection and there's going to be accountability. And that's really the relationship that's being cultivated. So this is something that I feel like very few people are have the opportunity for, because yoga is something that you can get online. It's become so watered down, and the market has become so flooded that like there really isn't much relationship. And teacher trainings are even with like all of these random teachers who may be very expert in their field, but is there even like a coherency
Mm,
in what is being taught, as opposed to, oh yeah, like Yoga
right.
Alliance, you need anatomy, you need this, you need that. And so it can be very disjointed in a lot of ways. But when it, and we've spoken about this before, but when you can find somebody who can give you um, enough specificity that it's covering all these aspects, and then you can get interested in study in different directions. Like I love one thing with my, what I've noticed is that then like, often in these trainings, the student will be like, oh, I have a deeper interest in this or that. And then they go on to diversify what they're offering. But there is like a sense of coherency. And as I always say, like, look, my trainings are small, they're not big box. And but it doesn't end on a certain day. Like, I'm available for you. You can call me. Here's my cell number. Like, and you can call me not just because you have a student who you don't know how to deal with, but because you're really going through something. And I'm here for you to lean into. It's a very different kind of a context. And also seeing how they age, how they go through the aging process and how they adapt.
That's great. That's really useful. I want to go back to what you said before about offering some of these deeper teachings too soon. And sometimes a student or someone will get stunted. And I'm wondering if you have um, trail markers of what the signs might be of either receiving, myself as a student, not being able to receive the deeper teachings and or as a teacher.
That's a really hard question that I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. I mean, you know, sometimes it just happens organically that people, they just will kind of like, they're looking for the next best thing.
Mhm.
And so they'll just kind of like get flushed out. Um, they think they've heard it all before. They
Right.
think they know it all before, and they forget that there's a magic that's happening and that there's real subtle things that are being transmitted. So I think it happens organically.
Hmm.
There's also a way of, I mean, now what I do is if I don't know you and you want to train with me, I grill you.
Yeah.
Why do you want to study with me? I want to hear from your other teachers.
Yeah.
I want to talk to them. What's going on there? And then there's a way of seeing, of working in that way. And then there's also the possibility where, you have a class at some, you know, really early time where people are really going to have to make the effort to show up. There's ways of doing it that happen organically. Um, there's like there was, I wish, this is a Sanskrit term that I forgot, but as far as the Bobby Pin Sutra, those ones in the second chapter that are just so tedious,
Yep.
there's a word for it, and it's like,
Mm.
this is the seer within, this is
Yeah.
the, and he like reiterating, like just splitting the sutra into minute little hairs, and it's tedious. And I was reading one purport which was saying this is very much part of the tradition where Patanjali hammers you with the
Mm.
same points over and over again with tedium. And in this way, only the ones who are really ready can keep going, the ones who
Hmm.
are willing to sit through those tedious moments.
Hmm.
Um, so, yeah, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
And now it's almost like, whatever, it's out of my hands.
Yeah.
And life is going to be their best teacher
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
because something's going to implode when you don't when you aren't like embodying and really taking it on, and you're just, like living a mask, or just kind of going, phoning it in, as they say, like, I guess in Hollywood. um something is going to implode. Either the structure becomes too top heavy and it just collapses, and
Mm.
then that will be their critical moment. So it's really not all on me,
Yeah.
but just having that awareness and having that question. And I really even see that with like the Kaivalya Pada, how many, like, well, they got what they needed at that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. But what do you think?
Oh. Um, yeah, I mean, I definitely think I don't think there's one kind of way. I think it's a nuanced thing and it's a different approach for every single person. For me as a teacher, I often also, I mean, it's interesting because I used to teach ballroom dancing in another lifetime. And I actually got reprimanded by my boss for teaching too much in a lesson. And I realized I needed to find a different career. But it was one of those things is that yeah, I have a really hard time holding back and teaching less. And as a teacher, I kind of play with that. Is sometimes it's so much more potent for me to say less, but it doesn't mean that my attention is less. And as a student, I also know that there are threads like you've been talking about this whole time. I might be interested in studying different subjects, but they're all in the same, I would say, tradition, like overarching tradition, whether it's rolfing or massage or yoga or anatomy, is that I'm not, for me, I just don't want to. I don't have an interest in really deviating. I mean, yes, I love taking a drawing class or, a sculpting, other kinds of art modalities, but in this vein of yoga and the whole thing of it, I do choose my teachers carefully. And I've also been blessed by, I just don't resonate with certain teachers, so I just don't go back and I don't keep trying. So, yeah.
Yeah, how many do you need, you
Yeah.
know? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like like they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and when the student is ready, the teacher disappears.
Let's hope that's true.
And also, as we're talking about this, because that is a really important piece where we don't share too loosely
Yeah.
the gems, and that was, that sense of like, don't share what is sacred with dogs. And dogs are actually better human beings and more humane than a lot of humans are. So this is not too harsh on dogs at all. But honestly, it's like you you can intimate things, and in this tradition it's where you let the student lead. So if
Mm,
the student's really interested, they're going to hang out,
yeah.
they're going to come to you in the twilight or when things have dispersed, and they're going to ask you for what
Yeah.
they're ready for.
That's
And
a
that's
great
where,
point.
like, I I'm a one woman, organization on some levels with my school. And people send me emails and they send me texts and there's questions, and we can have that. It happens outside of the context of a classroom. There's space for open dialogue. So maybe that's one of the ways that it happens as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Do you have time for one more question, or should we hold this question for next time?
Does it feel related to the other ones?
I think maybe we'll wait. Yeah,
Let's
we'll
wait.
start with this one. Okay. Because this was great. I'm so inspired now.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can gestate, we can all gestate on this
yeah,
and, let it be.
great.
Yeah.
Anything else in closing from what we've talked about so far?
Um, yeah, it's like this, you know, that people tend to spread themselves thin.
Mm,
And in that thinness, that perhaps they're not getting in touch with something deeper within themselves. And we could think about it as like surface and depth. So paying attention, and instead of going for like or dislike, and of course you have to use common sense, because I've definitely had contact with intense teachers, but upon further examination I realized that it was a power trip.
mm,
And that really, there was a lot of narcissism, and there was a lot of like, you know basically you were feeding their own, um, they were teaching from their wound and not to
mm,
the wound. So just because, not just choosing somebody just because it's hard or just because it's intense, but learning there's like that nimitam, the way that nature speaks to us. There's this recognition that there's something here. And then also recognizing that when something is really real for you, you're going to come up with a million excuses because of like the animal of our body, and the unexamined consciousness wants to hold on to the old operating system and not create space, and the effort to create that space to clean the storehouse, to be able to like come work with this person into a place of communion, and be able to hold space. um so of course that's where the yoga practice is, and the right teacher will appear at the right time, they say, but not everybody goes for it. And timing is everything, you know? I mean, there are certain things where it literally is impractical. It's like that sense of that, the Purusharthas. It's like, like for me, I would love to complete my structural integration Rolfing training. It's just not the right time.
Yeah.
With my son and with everything that's going on, I just don't want to disappear for 3 months and do the study. And also, I haven't found the right teacher yet who can actually certify me so that I can do that work. So it's like that whole school is really kind of like going through changes right now.
Mm.
So there are real practical things in which we have to sacrifice, and like I realize that I am Nico Das, and and it's also my greatest pleasure. There will be the right time to do it. So there's no easy answer in this, but there are signs and there are signals. And when something won't let you go, like when it keeps calling you, pay attention. And as the last session I think we had, or the one before last, was like that state of preparedness,
Mm-hmm.
because opportunities arise and then they disappear. And it's when when we look back and we go, oh my God, that was an incredible opportunity and I didn't grab a hold of it. That opportunity may not arise again, and we have to let it go. And hopefully it helps us to develop enough astuteness where we can, when we see the real deal, and the real deal meaning that it speaks to that real calling, that real longing within us to make the sacrifices, assuming that it's not shirking responsibility to those who we've signed up for in a really real way. There's a lot of reevaluation that has to happen here. I mean, I'm not talking about codependency. Nico is codependent, as he should
Yeah.
be. And it was when I decided, like when I wanted to get pregnant, I signed up for that, and I
Yeah.
have no regrets in that. So there's a lot of reevaluation that has to be there. And, am I resisting it because it's so important, or it's just not the time, or because I don't want to go through the trial by fire, go through the initiations, make the efforts, and really only you can know that. And you're only going to often know in hindsight. Yeah.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank
Hariom.
you so much. Hariom. This was a great conversation, and we'll speak soon.
I love you, and you're little, and blessings to all of our extended community out there. Yeah, we love to hear from you.
Yeah.
It's really nice to know what you're thinking, and please share with anybody who has that, as Patanjali says, that twinkle in their eye. Okay, much love. Aloha nui.
Aloha.